You also talk about the fairness product industry influences us and influences our desire. What are these messages? How do they convey these messages to us?
Yeah, so in studying advertising and looking at print, online, and television advertisements, what I tried to do was understand what are perhaps a few dominant messages that advertising is sending to women. How does it appeal, to women? How does it draw on this sort of the discrimination of colorism to sell to women? One of the prominent messages I found was this idea of transformation, so that women have to constantly be monitoring their body to actually to see how the product is changing them. So they have to become obsessed with change. They cannot be happy with who they are. And this sort of transformation is not permanent, as we know. So you have to keep using the product because if you don't, you'll become darker and then you will lose out on all these opportunities. So the idea of transformation and change and telling women that you can only be happy as long as you are constantly monitoring your body, which is perpetuating a form of everyday anxiety. Where you get up in the morning and go, am I darker today than yesterday? Oops, I have to keep using this product. So perpetuating that. The second way in which is a little more subtle that consumers may not understand, is this idea of medicalizing this problem and using scientific authority. So a lot of the ads will show internal diagrams of the epidermis and the dermis. They talk about rooting out melanin. They use a lot of scientific jargon. They show doctors in quotes telling women, this is what this product will do for you. So my concern about these kinds of appeals is that then dark skin color becomes a disease. So you see yourself as somebody who is a diseased person, and that cannot be healthy. And besides, there is no real scientific proof for how these products work, and so it's simply false. So by promoting this idea of disease, the industry is again trying to exploit women's anxieties. The third way in which the products appeal to women, sort of the dominant message, is by saying that you will not be attractive to any man, and to a large degree even to dark-skinned men, unless you as a woman are light-skinned, because this is your capital. This is your social capital. It's a form of capital for you. And so, you could never find true love. You will never find true companionship or capture a man's appreciation unless you become light-skinned. And so that, in a way, really targets younger women. You can see that because they are ready for romance and marriage. So this is the vulnerable stage in which they are exploiting women. But the final note I want to make about this sort of idea of appealing to the other sex is also it stereotypes men. I don't think it does justice to all the good men out there who are not shallow, who value women for intelligence, for character, personality, for professional success, and instead gives a very unidimensional, narrow image of men, which is not good for society either.
Mm-hmm. Right. When you were speaking about the first, the first way in which they communicate to us, I forget the term, transformation. I recall an interview that I had conducted back in Delhi with Santosh Desai, who has been in advertising for very long. He's also a columnist now with the Hindustan Times. And he has a completely different take on the same thing. And it's, I guess, if you pit advertising against academia, this discourse of colorism, of course they're going to be at two ends of the spectrum, which is why for me this is such an interesting inquiry also, is to basically juxtapose differing opinions and let people decide for themselves, where they want to situate themselves. And he actually says that it's very simple. Advertising for time immemorial has done this. We create a need and we fill it. And that is victory. That if you do that as a student of advertising, you get a 10 on 10, yes. You get an A+. But then when I talk to you about that same issue, it's a whole other perspective, and you're saying it's kind of feeding a daily anxiety.
It is.
Which is so, it's very interesting
It
to
is.
think
And
about.
to some degree, I want to say that it is not that people do not have critical thinking skills. It is not that people, think even. We cannot assume that people think these products change their skin color. So what you have to look at is, in a society already filled with colorism, the problem of colorism, how does advertising add or exacerbate an existing problem? So we can't assume that advertising is creating the problem, right? Or that it is the only institution contributing to this problem. So I would respond to people like Santosh Desai by saying, yes, advertising performs an economic function. People have wants and needs. People need cereal, or people need rice. People need all kinds of other oil. And so you have, advertising that sells those products to us. But this is a problem that is very deep rooted in Indian society and has been there for a long time. And, so the scale is very different to me. The scale of the problem is deep and wide enough that we should ask, how is advertising making things worse for perhaps a majority of India? Most of us, I would wager, are not Aishwarya Rai's skin color. So, so it's the magnitude of the problem that makes me say it goes beyond just filling a need, And then the lack of literacy and critical awareness that this is an issue that affects people emotionally makes it worse to me. So in the US today, you have, a very strong discourse that, that there is discrimination against fat people. It's talked about in universities. It's probably discussed in family situations. You have public service advertising. So you have a context where images of thin women that are beautiful, are circulating, in an atmosphere where there's some critical thinking about it. In India, we don't have that. So if these fairness cosmetics, were being given to women, but they were also being given other messages, then I wouldn't be as worried. But it is this void of critical thinking. And then you have this, a very significant, everyday kind of discourse that tells them you are deficient, that makes it a problem for me.
Very interesting. We, any closing remarks? Would you like to make some closing remarks?
Yeah, the closing remarks I would like to make are that the fairness industry is not only targeting women, but it's also targeting men now in a very big way. So you have, Shah Rukh Khan, who's peddling skin lightening cosmetics, and you have products like Fair and Handsome now targeting men. And so in a general sense, while women are the primary market for these products, it's also important to remember how it might affect young men, and that it's a problem that's really more widespread beyond just women. It's a problem that, that connects with ideas of class. We see poor people as darker skinned. We see South Indians as darker skinned and therefore, less beautiful, less etc. We see people of lower caste as darker skinned, right? So it's important to keep in mind that colorism is very widespread and connects with a host of other social problems.
Thank you very much. And we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot more about colorism talking to you today. And we hope to return maybe a few months down the line and talk more about the issues that you raised just now about caste and so on and so forth. Thank you once again.
Thank you.